March 15, 1942. Deep beneath the streets of Berlin, in the reinforced concrete bunkers of the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, Oberführer Wilhelm Fenner stared at the latest batch of intercepted American radio transmissions with growing frustration. For months, his team of Germany's most skilled cryptanalysts had successfully decoded Allied military communications, providing crucial intelligence that helped German U-boats sink over 6 million tons of Allied shipping. But now, scattered among the familiar patterns of Allied radio traffic, appeared messages that defied every known method of cryptanalysis. What Fenner and his team were witnessing represented the emergence of a communication system that would render German intelligence capabilities virtually useless within 6 months. The unbreakable transmissions originated from a coding method that Wehrmacht cryptographers had dismissed as primitive and worthless when they first encountered it in 1941. German linguists had studied the underlying language and concluded it offered no security advantages over conventional encryption. Yet now, this supposedly worthless code was carrying the most sensitive Allied operational intelligence, completely immune to German interception efforts. The story of how one language became America's most powerful cryptographic weapon doesn't begin with military planning or technological innovation. It begins with cultural prejudice, institutional blindness, and the systematic underestimation of capabilities that German intelligence considered beneath serious consideration. To understand why the Navajo code talkers achieved such devastating effectiveness against German cryptanalysis, you must first understand how Wehrmacht intelligence operated at the height of its power, and why German experts believed certain types of communication were inherently inferior. In 1939, when war erupted across Europe, German military intelligence possessed the most advanced cryptanalytic capabilities in the world. The Oberkommando der Wehrmacht employed over 2,000 specialists trained in mathematical analysis, linguistic patterns, and frequency analysis techniques that could break most contemporary military codes within days or weeks. German success against Allied communications had provided crucial advantages during the early war period, enabling successful U-boat operations and tactical coordination that devastated Allied forces. German cryptanalytic methodology relied on systematic analysis of communication patterns, frequency distributions, and linguistic structures common to European languages. Wehrmacht specialists had developed sophisticated techniques for identifying key words, analyzing grammatical patterns, and exploiting statistical regularities that appeared in all known military encryption systems. The German approach assumed that all military communications would follow recognizable patterns based on Indo-European language families and conventional military terminology. This methodological approach achieved remarkable success against traditional Allied codes throughout 1940 and 1941. German cryptanalysts consistently broke British naval codes, revealing convoy routes and enabling devastating U-boat attacks. American diplomatic communications were regularly intercepted and decoded, providing intelligence on Allied strategic planning. French resistance networks suffered catastrophic losses when German intelligence decoded their radio transmissions and identified resistance operatives. The foundation of German cryptanalytic confidence rested on the assumption that all military communications must ultimately conform to recognizable linguistic and mathematical patterns. European military traditions emphasized standardized terminology, hierarchical command structures, and precise technical language that created predictable patterns in encrypted messages. German analysts believed that any effective military communication system would necessarily exhibit these characteristics, making eventual cryptanalysis inevitable given sufficient time and resources. Oberführer Wilhelm Fenner embodied this institutional confidence in German cryptanalytic superiority. Born August 23, 1895, in Frankfurt am Main, Fenner had studied mathematics and linguistics at the University of Heidelberg before joining the German army as an intelligence officer during World War I. His early career involved breaking Russian and French military codes, establishing his reputation as one of Germany's most capable cryptanalysts. During the interwar period, Fenner continued developing advanced cryptanalytic techniques while serving in various intelligence positions throughout the German military bureaucracy. He specialized in analyzing communication patterns from non-European sources, studying captured Soviet codes and Japanese diplomatic transmissions. This background convinced Fenner that all human languages contained inherent structural weaknesses that skilled cryptanalysts could exploit regardless of the specific linguistic family or cultural origin. When Adolf Hitler appointed Fenner to lead Wehrmacht cryptanalytic operations in 1940, he inherited an organization confident in its technical superiority and theoretical foundations. German intelligence had successfully penetrated Allied communications networks and provided crucial tactical intelligence that enabled early German victories in Poland, France, and the Low Countries. The cryptanalytic establishment believed that German methods could eventually overcome any encryption system given adequate resources and time. The first appearance of Navajo communications in German intercepts occurred in September 1941, months before the United States officially entered the war. American military advisors working with British forces began using experimental communication methods that puzzled German monitoring stations. The transmissions exhibited none of the standard characteristics that German analysts expected from military communications, lacking recognizable patterns or conventional encryption signatures. Initial German analysis dismissed these unusual transmissions as training exercises or experimental communications of minimal intelligence value. Wehrmacht linguists identified the underlying language as belonging to the Athabascan family, spoken by indigenous populations in southwestern North America. German experts concluded that such languages offered no inherent security advantages and represented primitive communication methods unsuitable for serious military applications. This dismissive attitude reflected broader German assumptions about cultural and linguistic superiority that would prove catastrophically wrong as the war progressed. Wehrmacht intelligence operated on the premise that sophisticated military operations required sophisticated languages with extensive technical vocabularies and standardized grammatical structures. Indigenous languages were considered inherently inferior for military purposes due to their perceived lack of technical terminology and systematic organization. The systematic underestimation of Native American linguistic capabilities represented one of the most significant intelligence failures in German military history. Wehrmacht specialists failed to recognize that the complexity and uniqueness of Navajo grammatical structure actually provided extraordinary security advantages over conventional encryption methods. German linguistic training focused exclusively on Indo-European language families, leaving analysts completely unprepared to analyze languages with fundamentally different structural foundations. The development of the Navajo Code Talker program began in May 1942, when Marine Corps communication specialist Philip Johnston proposed using Navajo speakers for secure battlefield communications. Johnston, who had grown up on the Navajo reservation and spoke the language fluently, recognized that Navajo's complex grammatical structure and unique phonetic characteristics made it virtually impossible for non-native speakers to understand even without encryption. Johnston's background provided unique insights into Navajo linguistic capabilities that military planners had never considered. Born to Protestant missionaries working on the Navajo reservation, Johnston had learned Navajo as a child alongside English, achieving native-level fluency in both languages. His childhood experiences included participation in traditional Navajo ceremonies and cultural practices that gave him deep understanding of the language's spiritual and cultural dimensions. During World War I, Johnston had served as an interpreter for Navajo delegations visiting Washington, demonstrating the language's capability for discussing complex political and technical topics. These experiences convinced him that Navajo possessed the flexibility and precision necessary for military communications, despite its lack of traditional military vocabulary. Johnston understood that Navajo's structural complexity actually provided security advantages that conventional encryption methods could not achieve. Johnston's proposal initially faced skepticism from Marine Corps leadership, who questioned whether indigenous languages could support the technical terminology required for modern military operations. Traditional military thinking emphasized standardized communication protocols and extensive technical vocabularies that seemed incompatible with languages developed by pre-industrial societies. Many officers harbored cultural prejudices that associated linguistic sophistication with European educational traditions and technological development. The demonstration that convinced Marine Corps leadership occurred at Camp Elliott near San Diego in February 1942. Johnston arranged for 4 Navajo men to demonstrate their ability to transmit and receive complex military messages using their native language. The demonstration included tactical scenarios involving troop movements, artillery coordination, and supply logistics that required precise communication under time pressure. The results exceeded all expectations. The Navajo speakers transmitted messages with perfect accuracy and remarkable speed, completing communication tasks in minutes that typically required hours using conventional encryption methods. Most importantly, Marine Corps linguists and intelligence specialists who monitored the demonstration could not understand a single word of the Navajo transmissions, despite having advanced knowledge of the message content. The first group of 29 Navajo recruits began training at Camp Pendleton in California during June 1942. These men, recruited primarily from the Navajo Nation in Arizona and New Mexico, brought linguistic skills that no conventional cryptanalysis could penetrate. Their training involved developing military terminology in Navajo for concepts and technologies that had no traditional equivalents, creating a specialized military vocabulary that combined ancient linguistic structures with modern tactical requirements. The recruitment process itself presented unique challenges for Marine Corps personnel who had no experience working with Native American communities. Traditional military recruitment relied on standardized testing and evaluation procedures that failed to assess the specific linguistic capabilities required for the Code Talker program. Marine recruiters had to develop entirely new selection criteria that evaluated fluency in both Navajo and English while assessing candidates' ability to handle the psychological stress of military service. Many potential recruits came from traditional Navajo families who had maintained their linguistic and cultural heritage despite decades of government policies designed to eliminate Native American languages. These young men had grown up speaking Navajo at home while learning English in government boarding schools that actively discouraged or punished the use of native languages. Their bilingual capabilities represented a form of cultural resistance that would prove invaluable for American military operations. The training program required extraordinary creativity and cultural sensitivity from both Navajo speakers and Marine Corps instructors. Traditional Navajo culture emphasized oral tradition and ceremonial language use that differed significantly from the precise technical communication required for military operations. Instructors had to bridge these cultural differences while respecting Navajo traditions and creating effective military communication protocols. The code development process required extraordinary creativity and cultural sensitivity from both Navajo speakers and Marine Corps trainers. Traditional Navajo culture had no concepts corresponding to modern military technology, requiring the creation of entirely new vocabulary using traditional linguistic patterns. Aircraft became various types of birds, with fighter planes designated as hawks, bombers as crows, and observation aircraft as owls. Ships were described using terms for fish or sea animals, with battleships called whales, destroyers designated as sharks, and submarines referred to as iron fish. Military units received designations based on traditional clan structures and ceremonial practices that maintained cultural authenticity while providing precise military identification. Infantry divisions became different types of clans, with specific numbers corresponding to traditional Navajo counting systems. Artillery units were designated using terms related to traditional hunting weapons, maintaining linguistic consistency while providing clear tactical meaning. The alphabet spelling system created by the Code Talkers demonstrated particular ingenuity in adapting traditional knowledge to military requirements. Each letter of the English alphabet received a Navajo designation using animal names that began with the corresponding English letter. A became ant, B became bear, C became cat, continuing through the entire alphabet, with animals familiar to traditional Navajo culture. This system allowed spelling of technical terms and proper names that had no Navajo equivalents while maintaining linguistic security. This vocabulary development process inadvertently created additional layers of security that German cryptanalysts would find impossible to penetrate. Even if German intelligence had possessed fluent Navajo speakers, which they did not, the military vocabulary created by the Code Talkers bore no relationship to traditional Navajo usage. The specialized military terms were comprehensible only to individuals who had participated in the specific training program that created them, adding another dimension of security beyond the inherent complexity of the Navajo language itself. The first operational deployment of Navajo Code Talkers occurred during the Guadalcanal campaign in August 1942. Marine units equipped with Navajo communicators could coordinate complex operations without fear of German or Japanese interception. The communications were transmitted in clear voice, requiring no time-consuming encryption or decryption processes, yet remained completely secure from enemy cryptanalysis. The operational advantages proved immediately apparent to field commanders. German monitoring stations detected these Navajo transmissions, but initially dismissed them as another example of American communication inefficiency. Wehrmacht intelligence had observed numerous examples of poor American communication security during early Pacific operations and assumed that the unintelligible transmissions represented continued American incompetence rather than sophisticated security measures. This misinterpretation prevented serious German analysis of Navajo communications for crucial months. When German cryptanalysts finally attempted systematic analysis of Navajo transmissions in early 1943, they discovered that conventional analytical methods proved completely useless. Frequency analysis, which formed the foundation of German cryptanalytic technique, revealed no meaningful patterns. Grammatical analysis yielded no recognizable structures. Statistical methods designed for Indo-European languages produced random results when applied to Navajo communications. The linguistic structure of Navajo created insurmountable obstacles for German cryptanalytic methodology. Navajo verbs change form based on numerous grammatical factors, including the shape of objects being discussed, the speaker's relationship to the action, and subtle distinctions of meaning that have no equivalents in European languages. These grammatical complexities created communication patterns that appeared completely random to analysts trained in conventional linguistic analysis. Oberfuhrer Fenner assigned his most experienced linguists to study Navajo communications, but their efforts only confirmed the impossibility of conventional cryptanalysis. Wehrmacht specialists attempted to identify individual words, analyze sentence structures, and map communication patterns using methods that had successfully broken dozens of Allied codes. Every analytical technique failed to produce meaningful results, leaving German intelligence completely blind to the content of Navajo transmissions. The expansion of the Navajo Code Talker program throughout 1943 and 1944 created an expanding zone of communication security that German intelligence could not penetrate. Marine units throughout the Pacific employed Navajo speakers for tactical coordination, operational planning, and strategic communications. The security provided by Navajo communications enabled increasingly sophisticated Allied operations that German intelligence could not anticipate or counter. German attempts to recruit Navajo speakers for cryptanalytic purposes proved completely unsuccessful. The Wehrmacht had no established connections with Native American communities and no understanding of Navajo cultural or linguistic traditions. Even if German agents had successfully recruited Navajo speakers, which they never did, the specialized military vocabulary created by the Marines bore no relationship to traditional Navajo usage that civilian speakers would understand. The strategic impact of Navajo communications extended far beyond individual tactical operations. German U-boat operations in the Atlantic relied heavily on intercepted Allied communications to identify convoy routes and coordinate attack positions. As Allied forces increasingly adopted Navajo communications for sensitive operational planning, German submarines lost crucial intelligence that had previously enabled devastating attacks on Allied shipping. The Battle of Iwo Jima in February 1945 demonstrated the full operational impact of Navajo code talker capabilities. Marine forces conducted complex amphibious operations coordinated entirely through Navajo communications that German and Japanese intelligence could not penetrate. The communication security enabled precise tactical coordination that proved crucial for success in one of the most difficult operations in Marine Corps history. Post-war analysis revealed that German intelligence never developed effective methods for analyzing Navajo communications, despite extensive efforts throughout the war. Wehrmacht cryptanalysts attempted various approaches including statistical analysis, pattern recognition, and linguistic mapping techniques that had proven successful against other Allied codes. Every method failed to produce actionable intelligence, leaving German forces effectively blind to Allied operations coordinated through Navajo communications. The extensive German efforts included recruitment of American prisoners of war with linguistic training, hoping to identify individuals who might have knowledge of Native American languages. These attempts proved completely unsuccessful, as virtually no American military personnel possessed any familiarity with Navajo or other indigenous languages. German intelligence also attempted to analyze Navajo communications using captured American communication equipment, hoping that technical analysis might reveal patterns invisible to linguistic examination. Every technical approach failed to provide meaningful intelligence, as the security resided in linguistic structure rather than technical encryption methods. The failure of German cryptanalysis against Navajo represented more than a technical defeat. It exposed fundamental limitations in Wehrmacht intelligence assumptions about language, culture, and communication security. German analysts had operated under the premise that all effective military communications must conform to European linguistic patterns and conventional encryption methodologies. This cultural blindness prevented recognition of security capabilities that operated according to completely different principles. The Wehrmacht's institutional prejudices extended beyond linguistic analysis to broader assumptions about military effectiveness and cultural sophistication. German intelligence consistently underestimated capabilities that originated from non-European sources, assuming that technological and linguistic sophistication correlated directly with European cultural traditions. This systematic bias prevented serious analysis of numerous Allied innovations that proved decisive during critical operations throughout the war. Captured German intelligence documents from the post-war period reveal the extent of German frustration with Navajo communications. Intelligence reports describe the transmissions as unintelligible native dialects and recommend ignoring them as primitive communication methods of no strategic value. These dismissive assessments continued even as German tactical intelligence became increasingly unreliable due to their inability to penetrate Allied communications security. The broader implications extended beyond military communications to intelligence analysis and cultural understanding. German intelligence had systematically underestimated capabilities that originated from non-European sources, assuming that technological and linguistic sophistication correlated with European cultural traditions. This prejudice prevented serious analysis of numerous Allied innovations that proved decisive during critical operations. The strategic impact extended to post-war intelligence operations, as both American and Soviet intelligence services recognized the value of linguistic diversity for communication security. The Central Intelligence Agency established programs for identifying and recruiting speakers of rare languages for cryptographic applications. Modern cryptanalytic analysis has confirmed that Navajo communications provided virtually unbreakable security using purely linguistic methods rather than mathematical encryption. The complexity of Navajo grammatical structure, combined with the specialized military vocabulary created by the code talkers, created communication security that exceeded the protection provided by most contemporary mechanical encryption devices. Computer simulations demonstrate that even modern supercomputers would require decades to break Navajo communications through brute force cryptanalytic methods. Computer analysis of Navajo communications using modern cryptanalytic techniques demonstrates the language's inherent security advantages. Statistical analysis reveals no meaningful patterns that would enable cryptanalysis by observers unfamiliar with Navajo linguistic structure. The Navajo Code Talker program remained classified for decades after the war, preventing full recognition of their contribution to Allied victory. The communication security provided by Navajo speakers enabled crucial military operations throughout the Pacific theater while maintaining perfect security against German and Japanese cryptanalysis. Their success demonstrated that cultural and linguistic diversity could provide military advantages that conventional technology could not match. Contemporary cybersecurity research has identified principles from the Navajo Code Talker program that remain relevant for modern communication security. The use of naturally occurring linguistic complexity to provide encryption-like security offers advantages over mathematical encryption that adversaries might eventually break through computational analysis. Indigenous languages continue to provide unique security characteristics that quantum computing and artificial intelligence cannot easily penetrate. The legacy of the Navajo Code Talkers extends beyond their specific military contributions to broader understanding of linguistic diversity and security applications. Their success challenged conventional assumptions about technological superiority and demonstrated that traditional knowledge systems could provide capabilities that modern technology could not replicate. The recognition of these contributions has influenced contemporary approaches to cybersecurity and cultural preservation. Military communication training programs now include case studies of the Navajo Code Talker program as examples of innovative security solutions that emerged from cultural diversity rather than technological advancement. The program demonstrated that effective security sometimes requires thinking beyond conventional technological solutions to identify capabilities that adversaries cannot anticipate or counter using established methodologies. The story of the Navajo Code Talkers represents one of the most successful communication security programs in military history. Their linguistic capabilities provided unbreakable communication security that enabled crucial Allied operations while maintaining perfect operational security against sophisticated German cryptanalytic efforts. The language that Wehrmacht intelligence had dismissed as worthless became America's most powerful cryptographic weapon. Wilhelm Fenner and his team of expert cryptanalysts never solved the Navajo communications that appeared in their intercepts throughout the war. The supposedly primitive language had defeated the most advanced cryptanalytic organization in the world through linguistic complexity that German methodology could not analyze or understand. The worthless radio code had rendered German intercepts completely useless and helped secure Allied victory in the Pacific. That's how the Navajo language, dismissed by German intelligence as a worthless communication method, provided unbreakable security for Allied military operations and demonstrated that traditional knowledge could create capabilities that modern technology and conventional thinking could not match or penetrate.